Hello and welcome to Darling Point Wharf and Hump Day, of course. It's Wednesday, Hump Day, my favourite. I always say they're my favourite, but I do love Hump Day. And as it happened, I had a really good question in the email this morning, so I thought I would talk to you about that one. I'm here at Darling Point Wharf. My God, Sydney is so beautiful, isn't it? What an amazing city. There's some boats out there behind me. I'll try and get them for you. Having a lovely Wednesday afternoon on the harbour. Not a bad life there. I grew up around the corner actually, and my sister and I used to come down this wharf. It's right at the end of Darling Point Road. There didn't used to be one here, but behind me there it goes all the way around the corner to Darling Point. We lived around there, and we used to have this little bit of a dare where we would come down here and then we'd have to get home via the waterfront, and that involved running through people's gardens, and later on we'd even do this. We wouldn't just run through the garden, but if they had a pool, you'd have to swim through their pool and do all this before you got caught. Of course, me being me, you know, one of those little girls, I was still always mentally doing it on horseback. The same with driving to the country. Did you used to do that as a horse-crazed teenager? I always used to sit in the back of the car driving to the country, and I would mentally be galloping along beside the car, jumping all the fences. I think National Velvet has a lot to answer for, quite frankly. Anyway, so back to our problem today, our Hump Day discussion. The email I got this morning is something that I think a lot of people have a problem with, but it's not always voiced. Now, this lady was saying to me that her horses started to bite her or go to bite her when she's about to mount, and so she's obviously investigated the usual causes. So first of all, she said that the horse did have a saddle that didn't fit, so she replaced that with another saddle which she thought fitted quite well, and now the horse has got a third saddle which she says she knows fits the horse, so she's happy with that. She's really comfortable that the saddle fits the horse, so that's great. And that is exactly where I would start, would be with the saddle. And then she said, do you think perhaps the horse has got a back problem? And that's another thing to check. So what she said was she feels that there might be some back pain because she had the saddle off. So she's taken the horse bareback to the mounting block, and it's done the same thing when it's not wearing the saddle as it was doing. It's gone to bite her as it was doing when it was wearing the saddle. Now, there's a few possible things. Horses, as we know, are great pattern learners. So it may be that the horse has learned this pattern. When you get on, because the saddle doesn't fit or I have a sore back, it really hurts, so I would rather you didn't get on, therefore I'm going to stop that action happening by biting you. And that's a very sensible thing for the horse to do. So obviously the first thing to do is to check out the cause. If you suspect at all that the horse is in pain, do get your saddle fitted and do get somebody out to have a really good thorough look at the horse's back to make sure that there isn't a pain issue. There's absolutely no point in persevering with anything if the horse has a pain issue, because you're only going to make it worse and really escalate that problem. The other thing is knowing that the horse did have an ill-fitting saddle. It might be because horses are such good pattern learners that this horse has simply learnt that pattern, and it's now a learned behaviour. And so I would go back then, in that case, once I'd ruled out pain, I'd go back and treat the horse as a bit of a restart for as far as the saddle's concerned. So I'd go through the first saddling lessons, because they're terribly important for any horse that's had a problem with saddling. And then I'd go through and do the move your hips to the fence for mounting, because that's often also a very different way of getting on. So if you change the pattern, it becomes a new lesson for the horse, and that allows the horse to rethink the whole idea and learn some new behaviours associated with mounting. So that's really good. Another problem that we have, especially because we have horses in such unnatural environments. Even when we take them and we think they're in a really natural environment, because we have them in a lovely herd, we're still really interfering with their communication just by interacting with them. So you'll see, we often say horses, beat each other up in the paddock, and we have to be rough on them because they're rough with each other. And people say, oh, look how they behave with each other. It doesn't matter if you smack the horse hard and that sort of thing. And of course, it's not true, but it is often said. If you really look at a stable herd environment, the horses very rarely hurt one another. We make it difficult for the horse because we keep changing their environment. So we put new horses into their herd, or we move them from one property to another, and they've got to go through all of that business of settling in again. So when you get an established herd that know each other well, they rarely have to go to the lengths that they have to when they're introducing themselves to each other and getting to know each other. So we make that worse by not always recognizing those little tiny signs that the horses give to one another that prevent these behaviors from escalating to where they have, like for this owner, for example, where the horse actually feels the need to bite her. So I always say that you're in the best position to train your own horse because you know your horse so well. And I think that's really relevant here, especially because if you know your horse, if you really study your horse when you're with your horse, you will know all those little behaviors that come before the horse goes to bite you. When the horse actually goes to bite you and makes a move to bite you or actually bites you, you have missed so many cues. We say horses are unpredictable, but horses aren't unpredictable. They're very predictable. We miss the behaviors that come beforehand. So that horse will have looked around at her, the horse will have probably pinned its ears a little bit, and it would have escalated these behaviours until it came around and, showed its teeth to her, or perhaps it even bit, and eventually it would bite. And the horse, it feels in a position that it has to escalate, has to get more aggressive because it's being ignored. So if we can pick up these behaviours more quickly and earlier on, the horse won't feel the need to escalate. So I think that's a really important takeaway is, you are in the best position to train your horse simply because you can learn those little behaviours so well and so much better than anyone else can. They are an individual thing with a horse. I mean, they're all quite similar, but you know when your horse is not happy and when something is not right with your horse, and you can observe how your horse behaves in those situations. So I do think that that's really important. So with this problem with the mounting where the horse is going to bite the owner, I think first of all you have to rule out pain, and do that by whatever means you can. Get somebody that you really trust in to have a look, because I have had that myself, and I had a horse that was a really serious bucking horse, and as soon as I thought that it had got over the bucking, I thought the bucking was simply a learned behaviour, and then it did it again. I got somebody back in, a professional, to check the back for me, because as far as I could see it looked fine, and me poking about with it looked fine, but I'm not an expert on the back at all. So, and they said, look, this horse has got some really old nasty scar tissue along its top line, and that is probably what's causing the problem. So the horse was okay when he was warmed up and he'd been going for a little while, but then if you stopped, and I stopped and I got off, and then when I got back on again 5 minutes later, he'd cooled down, and that was when he reacted. So he did have a physical problem. So after I put him out for 6 months and we repaired his back and everything else, I then had to take him way back to basics to make the saddling and the riding experience a whole new thing for him. I didn't want him going back to his old patterns of behaviour, which were very well established. So I went back and did the first saddling and taught him hips to the fence, taught him a different way of mounting and all of those sorts of things to make him safe and to make it a whole new experience for him. Here comes the ferry. I better go. I'm going to go. Bye guys. See you tomorrow.